Hey everybody, welcome to today's webinar, 7 Essential Tips for Your Go-to-Market Strategy. My name is Sarah Adams and I'm a Marketing and Communications Coordinator or Manager over here at Askuity. I'm really excited to welcome back Sabrina Yavel, our guest host for today. Sabrina partnered up with us a few months ago for a webinar called How to Get to the Top of Your Category at Sephora. And we are thrilled to bring her back today to share her insights into building the best go-to-market strategy for your brand. For those who aren't familiar with Sabrina, she's a marketing and retail consultant for beauty and consumer goods. Sabrina specializes in branding and positioning, product launches, go-to-market strategies, e-commerce, and consumer and market research. Sabrina was the Executive Director of Global Marketing and Director of Strategy and Planning at 2 top North American retail brands. Prior to that, Sabrina was in financials and worked in mergers and acquisitions at Deloitte. Sabrina is one of the most interesting guests that we have on our webinars, and I know that you will enjoy our conversation today. Sabrina, did I miss anything?
No, that's it. Thanks.
Awesome.
Great.
So our agenda for today is to go through the 7 essential tips that Sabrina's laid out for us. And at the end of the presentation, you will also get a bonus tip. So thanks for joining us today. You'll get something else really cool. And if anybody has any questions for Sabrina or myself throughout the presentation, please feel free to submit them in the Zoom terminal, and we will answer them all during the Q&A session at the end. I highly recommend that you take the opportunity to ask Sabrina any questions that you can during the webinar, because her insights are really amazing, and you don't want to miss that opportunity. We'll also be sending out a recording of the slides of the entire webinar afterwards, and we'll send you a webinar feedback survey, so please fill that out. We'd love to hear about what you think of our webinars, and we enjoy doing them, so we want to know what you like to hear about.
Okay.
And here we go.
All right. Well, thanks, Sarah. So I'm thrilled to be back here today with you doing another webinar for Askuity. We had such a good time last time. So, and this is another great topic I love talking about. As you said, I have kind of a roundabout background. I've worked in product marketing, brand strategy, sales planning, demand planning, product development, business development. I pretty much rounded the bases in a product company. But my love is consumer marketing, and that's what I focus on now. And a big part of that is launching products and running promotions. So like you said, today's focus is on the 7 essential elements any brand would need to consider when putting together their go-to-market strategy. But before we get into that, let's say we've got a product or promotion we want to launch. What's the plan? How will potential customers hear about it? Where are we going to sell it? How are we going to describe what it is, what it does, and why someone should buy it? How much are we willing to spend to promote it? And how are we going to know if it's going well? Okay, a go-to-market strategy for any promotion, you can advance, Sarah. A go-to-market strategy for any promotion involves setting objectives, determining the scale of the promotion, defining the offer, choosing the best levers, developing a launch campaign, getting retailer buy-in, aligning the whole team, and monitoring and adjusting your promotion. Okay, but before we can start thinking about launching our promotion, let's just a moment revisit what a strategy is. A strategy is a plan of action designed to achieve one or more goals. So the first step to creating any type of go-to-market strategy involves goal setting. And then we can lay out the steps that will help us get there. Some examples of goals might be hitting a sales target, or acquiring new customers, or a new customer segment, or selling more to existing customers. Once we've set out our goals, then we need to put together a strategy to achieve them. The reason we have to go through this process is because we can't do everything. We have to look at all our options and then prioritize the actions that will help us best achieve our goals. And that means saying no to things. A strategy means being just as selective about the activities we choose to do as the ones we choose not to do. The next tip is to determine the scale of the promotion. This is important so we plan our activities commensurate with the goals of the launch. for every launch, I basically go through like the following questions. How important is this promotion compared to others? If this is a smaller launch, do we really want to pull resources away from bigger projects to focus on this? What size of investment are we willing to put behind this promotion versus others? Is this the biggest launch of the year, or is this a smaller ancillary promotion? Where is this promotion launching? Is the reach local, regional, national, or global? And what's the distribution plan? Is it through our website only, maybe limited retail doors or all doors? Are we offering any retailer exclusivity? Okay, the next tip is to think about the offer itself. What's the core product that we're trying to promote? For instance, I was working with a company to develop a new women's hair care line, and they were launching on their website and at Sephora. So their core product was full-size hair care and styling products. But to support the launch, we had to consider whether we needed to develop additional sizes for launch, like smaller sizes for travel and sampling, which we did. Would we offer discounts at launch? Or would we create bundle sets, for instance, that had additional value? We ended up choosing bundle sets because in the prestige cosmetic space, you rarely see discounting. So instead, we focused on adding value. Should this be part of a referral or affiliate program? We thought it should be, since influencers and word of mouth were part of our overall strategy. So just things to consider. Okay. The next tip is choosing the levers for our promotion. There are two main types of marketing strategies: push and pull. With the push strategy, the idea is to push your products onto your customers with the intent of making a sale. Some examples are merchandising and point of sale displays, discounts or limited time offers, samples and testers, direct mail, email, and trade show promotions. A pull strategy, on the other hand, is a way to create demand for the product or promotion. These are marketing activities that help build awareness, create interest, and drive traffic to points of sale. Some examples are advertising, so like print ads and social ads, social media, influencer campaigns, and PR. Okay, so now comes the hard part, and that's whittling down the options to only the ones that will get us to our goal. There was a client I was working with that had a whole preliminary launch strategy put together before I got there, and they wanted me to go back through it and give my recommendations about what they should do. So first, I always go back to objectives. In this case, they were launching a new product line targeted to millennials, which was a new consumer group for them. And they wanted to achieve a certain sales target in the first year. So knowing this, I started prioritizing each activity against how well they were aligned with the goals and how impactful they would be. Next, it has to fit within the scale of the promotion. In this case, this was a pretty big launch for them. So we were looking at a full-scale launch. That included like paid influencers, a whole digital campaign, paid social, paid search, etc. Next, I looked at how much effort was necessary for each activity. Every company is tight on resources. Whether you're a $10 million business or a $1 billion business, there will always be limits on budgets, number of hours in the day, and manpower to get stuff done. Now, they had planned to do a huge PR event and had like $50,000 to $100,000 budgeted for this already. But guess what? PR events are really time and people intensive. And when we looked at what we were hoping to get out of the event and what else we wanted to do for the launch, the head of PR and I started thinking about how we could achieve the same goal, which was to get 6 amazing national magazine placements without doing a whole PR event. And we decided 6 smaller intimate dinners with editors would get us the same effect for only $10,000 and much less effort.
Yeah, Sabrina, I'm going to jump in here. My background is actually in public relations, and I worked with many consumer goods brands on the PR aspects of their go-to-market strategies. And I can tell you firsthand how expensive those PR events can get. And oftentimes the brands that I would work with would put on these really massive, fancy events just for the sake of putting one on. The hope was that it might, excuse me, might attract the attention of influencers in media, and if they liked it, they might cover your brand. But at the end of the day, once everything went back to finance, in many of these cases, the cost benefit just didn't weigh out. I think in reality, exactly as Sabrina just said, many of these brands could have gone down the more effective route and held smaller, more intimate events like dinners and calling out the attention of very specific influencers in media, while at the same time guaranteeing that coverage instead of hoping for it.
Yeah, and I had no idea your background was in PR, so that's awesome. We should definitely talk. Okay, the next tip is to develop a launch campaign to tell, oh wait, sorry, I messed up. So I forgot a couple tips. The next, whatever we choose to do has to fit within our timeline. So as I mentioned, we were going to develop sets for the hair care launch, but sets can take a long time to develop because you've got separate like packaging and artwork. You have to assemble all the components, and maybe some of the components are coming from overseas. So in our example, we actually had to launch without sets. So knowing how long things take is really, really key when you're selecting your activities. And the last criteria here is to look at how well we can pull something off. We didn't want to bite off more than we can chew, meaning we didn't want to plan too many activities. I would rather do fewer things really well than too many things just okay. Okay.
So I think at this point we are going to ask our first Askuity poll question, and I am just going to pull that up for everybody to be able to answer. The question is, which levers do you use most for your promotions? Your answers are advertising, search, in-store, events and trade shows, social media, or influencers. Sabrina, what have you kind of seen in the world that you're working in?
I feel like people definitely do social media, and hope for some type of influencer for word of mouth, and maybe search, and then depending on your budget, they might do Facebook ads or Instagram ads, or special merchandising or something.
Yeah, no, it's funny to see these results in. We have a three-way tie between the in-store events and social media.
Cool. Okay.
Great. So let's jump into the next tip.
Okay. The next one is to develop a launch campaign to tell our story. Whether we're doing the creative internally or we have an agency, there are some best practices that I've picked up over the years. The first is to use insights, and that's from your own research or from secondary research. But you need insights that get to the core of your customers' needs before you can develop a truly powerful message that resonates with them. Some of the insights could even come from like Askuity POS data, to see which products and categories are resonating in which regions, or with which retailers or even specific retail locations. That could be helpful. The second is to create an emotional connection with your customer, as well as highlighting product benefits. For instance, let's say you have a cleaning product. I know when I have a stain, I feel a combination of like dread and angst that it's not going to come out. So if you can tap into your customers' emotions and give them a reason to believe that you can solve their problem, that's like a 1-2 punch. You're drawing the customer in and winning her trust. Next is having a clear, succinct message. People's attention spans are super short these days, so thank you all for staying with us. I think it's like 8 seconds max before they move on, and you might even get less as they're browsing online or in store. So your campaign headline carries a big burden of communicating enough information to pique their interest. This is where insights can be super helpful, because you want to get to the core of their issue and how you're going to solve it in a matter of seconds. Next, having a strong campaign visual is just as important as the headline, because people process visuals much faster than words. So your visual is probably what they'll see first and should reinforce the headline message. If the visual is at all disconnected from the message, it creates confusion. So if it takes more than 3 to 5 seconds for someone to get what you're trying to say, then you've lost them. They've already moved on. For instance, let's say you're selling a baby product, but your image is of the mom. So wait, is this a baby product or is this a product for the mom? At that point, like someone's already confused, they've already moved on. It needs to grab attention. Considering how many ads and marketing materials we're exposed to every second, your message needs to somehow break through the clutter. And whether that's in someone's inbox or as they're browsing a shelf in store or scrolling through social media. And the next is to be differentiated. This kind of goes with breaking through the clutter because you want to stand out. But it also means, is your message specific to your product or brand? I'll give you an example. A client I was working with engaged a creative agency to help design the campaign concept. And we liked one of the concepts more than the rest, but we had to push back because if you took our branding off and slapped on someone else's, it could have easily worked for a dozen other brands. So it wasn't unique enough to us, and it certainly wouldn't have been memorable. It needs to translate across media. Let's say you come up with a concept for a commercial. Whatever that concept is, the campaign visual and headline will need to work in print or social, ads, in store, on social media, your website, in email, etc., so that the message stays consistent and the campaign looks cohesive. Okay, the campaign needs to be locally relevant and compliant with local regulations. For example, when I was working at this global company, we always created translation guidelines which describe the spirit and sentiment of a campaign in case the headline didn't make sense in other countries, like if we were using an American expression. We also had to make alternative headlines if product claims or before and afters weren't allowed in certain countries. The last tip is to simplify complicated messages. If you have a complicated message or technology, spend time making it super simple to understand and remember. One client I was working with is all about innovation, and they developed a new technology which is different than every other approach currently out there. But because it's so breakthrough and scientific, it's not super easy to explain. So we had to work with R&D and education to figure out the best way to explain it in an image or GIF that anyone looking at it would be like, okay, I get it, and like I get how it works, and I want it. Once you've started solidifying your plans, I found it's best to share them with your retailers before locking them in, especially if you're looking to your retailers for support, like an extra product display, co-op advertising, or email. They may even have feedback on the campaign or promotion. One client I was working with was launching at a retailer, and they were very vocal about the campaign imagery as well as the pricing and sizes that we should be developing, which is ultimately really helpful because the more retailers get excited about your promotion, the better chance you have negotiating support from them and being included in some of their own programs and initiatives. And speaking of retailer programs, it's always worthwhile to do some research on your retailers so you know what their goals are and what their initiatives are. That way, when you're meeting with them, you can show how aligned your promotion is with their plans. One example that comes to mind is when Toys R Us closed. Other retailers like Walmart and Target saw the opportunity to absorb that business and decided to pretty much double down on toys, not only during the holidays, but year-round. So if your business is toys and you know those retailers are investing in your category, you can play that up the next time you're pitching a promotion. The other benefit to talking with your retailers in advance is to really gauge demand. If it turns out your promotion aligns with their initiatives and they're really excited, you may need to bump up production. On the other hand, if their focus is elsewhere and you're not going to get the placement or orders you anticipated, then hopefully there's still time to scale down production so you're not overstocked. Okay. In order for any go-to-market strategy to work, the whole team needs to understand what we're trying to accomplish and then take some ownership over the execution. That way, if things start veering off course, they know what the end game is and can help right the ship. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but it's true. The Army actually has a concept called commander's intent.
And the idea is that no amount of planning ever survives real life. So if everyone on your team understands the goals and what the strategy is designed to accomplish, then they can adapt if and when things start deviating from the plan. Okay, and here's the last tip. This is the bonus, and it's to monitor and adjust your promotion. Because once you launch, there's still quite a bit to do to make sure your go-to-market strategy is on track. First is to manage inventory levels, so you don't go out of stock too soon, or you don't start stockpiling inventory. Especially if you've got some, like a seasonal promotion. You can use a solution like Askuity to see your overall levels and even stock by retailer or region. On the screen here, this is an example of being able to compare units sold to units on hand. The purple circles show the doors where you're selling the most stock, and the size shows how much stock is on hand, which is good because you want more stock in the doors that are selling through the best. You wouldn't want to see a large red circle, for example, because that would mean you have way too much stock on hand compared to sell-through. Okay, next, in terms of monitoring and adjusting, read and try to respond to consumer reviews and social posts if you can. I always learn a lot from customer feedback, and sometimes I can even apply that to the current program or to future launches. Check in with retailers and sales associates to hear about what's working and not working. They are your direct line to your customers and will be able to tell you how your customers are responding to your pricing, your merchandising samples, etc. And then last, is the message clear? Does it resonate with customers? Or do you need to hustle after you launch and modify the message or create additional materials? Okay, so let's quickly recap before we go on about what we've discussed here today. Okay, first, we need to define our end game and then work backwards. We always need to keep going back to that because that's like our North Star and will help us keep on track. Second, we need to be thoughtful and make hard decisions about the activities we're going to do as well as the ones we're not going to do. Next is to prioritize what you think you can reasonably do well and then knock that out of the park. We can't do everything, so focus on the things that should have the greatest impact on your meeting your objectives. Next is to get buy-in, not only from retailers, but internally too. It takes a village to do a launch, right? From product development and supply chain to sales and training to PR and marketing. So making sure everyone is crystal clear on the goals and strategy is super important so they can effectively do their part to help the launch go smoothly. And lastly, once we launch, it's not time to sit back and celebrate. There's still a lot of work to be done and an opportunity to right the ship if it looks like any part of the promotion is off course.
For sure. So I want to ask everybody on the call, I'm just going to open this poll for everybody to be able to answer. What elements are missing from your go-to-market strategy based off of what we've discussed today? So as the answers kind of roll in, Sabrina, where do you think that there is a gap between what brands should be doing and what they are doing?
I know that this seems like the most obvious of the points, which is the setting objectives and your priorities. But I feel like it's the thing that's rushed through the most. Like people get really excited and they start throwing out ideas of like, oh yeah, let's do social media, let's do a blog, let's do a digital campaign. And they just start kind of like listing all these things that they think will drive excitement and engagement. But you really got to go back to, okay, well, what was the objective of the launch? The objective of the launch was to hit your sales goal, right? So how is launching an influencer campaign going to get you there unless you've got a plan to monetize it? So I think it's really being rigorous about evaluating all of the options that you have and going back to, okay, that sounds great, but what's the cost benefit? What's the ROI of this? And how well are we going to be able to, going through that whole priority list, like how impactful will it be? How aligned is it with our goals? How well are we equipped to do it? Like, do we have the capability to actually like pull this off? How long will it take? Do we have are we anticipating the budget? Like, don't go develop samples if you don't have, $20,000 to $50,000 to spend on developing them, to give them away to your retailers, because usually retailers don't pay for samples. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting to see these results. We have a tie here between get retailer buy-in and aligning the whole team. Does that surprise you at all?
No, I'm not surprised either, because communication is tough. Like, and that's another thing is, like, the people that are planning they forget what they know versus what other people know. Yeah. And making sure that you're over communicating to everyone and getting that buy-in, so everyone feels like they really understand what the objective is.
Yeah, absolutely.
But no, I'm not surprised.
So that wraps up the presentation portion of the webinar. Just before we jump into the Q&A, and I want to give everybody an opportunity right now to start asking questions in that Q&A box in Zoom. Thank you so much, Sabrina, for taking the time out of your day today to come on and share your wisdom with everybody on the call. I really found it really valuable, and I'm sure everybody else did as well. If anybody on the call wants to learn more about Askuity and the inventory management tools we provide, like that heat map or out of stock or zero sales stores report, or any of our other features, including sales enablement, field team enablement, regional analysis, pricing and promotional comparison, or cost retailer analysis, feel free to reach out and we'll be more than happy to answer all your questions. And Sabrina's info is also here if you ever want to reach out to her. She is, like I said, a wealth of knowledge, and Sabrina's been amazing to work with. So let's jump into the Q&A. I will start pulling that up, and it looks like we have quite a few questions. The first being, how much time should I allocate to building my next year's strategy?
Okay. Good question. I think part of it has to do with, like, how complicated your business is and what your goals are. And is this the first time you're creating a strategy, or is this, you have a strategy from last year that's looking forward, and you're just, refining it. For a larger company, a strategy process could be several months, like, at least 2 to 3, 4 months long, especially if you've got, like, a big team that has to weigh in, or, a board or investors that it has to go through. If you're, a smaller business, or like a single proprietor, obviously it's going to take less time. Also, if this is the first time you're doing it, you're going to have to invest more time, because you're going to also want to, plan ahead, not just this upcoming year, but the next few years. If you've already gone through that process, I always look at strategies as you're tweaking and refining. If you are starting over every year, and redoing your 3-year plan every year, then you didn't have a good 3-year plan. You weren't rigorous enough that first time. So I would allow, also who's participating. You want your team to be engaged. You're the head of your departments to weigh in, because they're going to have to own their part of the strategy. So I would definitely plan for at least a couple months. And then it's what do you mean by strategy? Is this like a product launch strategy or a promotional strategy, or are you talking like brand? So I was pretty much speaking about a brand strategy. If you're talking about like a promotional or product launch, still you're going to need to engage, like all the different verticals, whether that's, sales and marketing, like what are they seeing out there, product development, R&D. You just want to have, a team effort. A strategy should, I never want to just sit in a room and develop my own strategy, because if I, structured my team right, I'm not the smartest person in the room, right? You're hiring people that are very capable and are going to have to own their parts of the strategy. So giving enough time for people to think through it and be thoughtful and have really good dialogue and conversation and be able to like throw out options and whittle them down, it takes a few months, especially when you're running a business, on the side. I hope that makes sense. If it didn't, please follow up and I'm happy to clarify.
So now we have two very similar questions, kind of around what happens if a strategy isn't working. This person says, Sabrina, what do you do if you find your promo isn't working after you've put all this budget towards it? And a second person asked, do you have an example of a strategy you had to adjust? What happened and what did you do about it? So maybe if you want to kind of tackle those together.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's say you put some budget behind it. I mean, I've been in a situation where we did TV commercials. So, I mean, TV commercial, you're spending $1 million to develop it, and you need, $2 to $4 million just to run it. So you've got to have big budgets. Now we started launching, and sometimes you need to just be able to say, okay, I'm going to throw more into it, or I'm going to scale back. And sometimes you just have to, cut your losses and say, okay, this is not working. I'm going to, pull back on the investment and put it towards something else. Sometimes, you just have to look at it as a sunk cost. That's, after you've done what you can. So when I said we were looking at customer reviews, there was one launch that we thought should go better. And we thought that that resale, like addition, like replenishment should be stronger. So when we were looking at customer reviews, we figured out people were, it was not an expensive product, but people kind of were using it like it was so precious, and they weren't seeing the results. So when you looked at and you realize, okay, people aren't using the product as intended, and so they're not getting the results or the benefits that you had promised them, and they feel like your product doesn't work, then it goes back to the messaging and the education. Okay, like what are we putting out there in terms of direct marketing materials that communicate and reinforce the correct usage, and then how are we training the sales team to speak to it? So there are ways to go back and tweak marketing materials or sales pitches and things like that. Or let's say you hadn't negotiated any like co-op advertising, or you didn't do some type of or you're running paid ads and they're not really working. It's about going back and looking at it and trying to adjust it in real time. You've got to kind of play around with it, and you've got to be nimble enough and flexible enough to make adjustments.
Sure.
So I hope that is helpful. But sometimes you just have to say, okay, we're going to, reallocate the money to something else, and you just walk away from it. In terms of inventory, we've definitely scaled down production. Maybe we had a big pipeline and sell in was fine, but sell through, was kind of slower than we thought. We definitely would quickly readjust forecasts and bring down forecasts so that we weren't triggering additional production. And then we would try to manage sell through of the on-hand stock as best as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to plug Askuity in here. Definitely use a tool like Askuity to be able to manage that inventory and keep an eye on where things are going well, where things aren't, and your overall POS data.
Yes.
Perfect. And this is going to be our last question, just in terms of timeline. And if anybody has any other questions, feel free to put them through. Write your name, and Sabrina and I will definitely get back to you. But this one says, Sabrina, do you have any tips for getting my merchants excited about potential promotions that we want to run?
Yeah, I think that really being in tune with your retailer's business and how they run the business and what the programs that they're involved in, the initiatives that they're involved in. You've got to know what is interesting to them. So, and then align your promotion or your plans with them. So if you know that they are, let's say every quarter they have a certain focus on a category or something, and your category fits in that, then you can show well, our category, I have a product in our category. It's one of our best sellers. It should definitely work with your category. So showing how you're helping them, it's always go back to the WIFM. Whether you're doing consumer marketing
or you're talking with your retailers, it's all about them. It's not what's benefiting you and your promotion and your business. It's how your promotion and business is going to benefit your retailer and make them look good and make more money. So I think that's how you get them excited in your stuff, is to show them how you're benefiting their business.
For sure. And also just bringing that data to be able to back it up is something that we found our clients really, really find useful and find valuable, is not just going empty handed to your merchant or to your buyer, but saying, hey, this is what we've done in the past. These are our POS insights. Let's leverage that so that we can help you.
100%. The better prepared you are, it's also knowing your audience. Retailers tend to be more numbers focused and data focused, especially if they're trying to fight for you upstream, up channel. So if you give them the ammo that they can then, fight for you, you're helping yourself and you're helping them.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for taking the time. Thanks to everybody on the call for taking the time. We're going to call it for today, but we look forward to seeing you in the new year.
Yeah, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Absolutely. Okay. Bye-bye.